The opinions expressed in this show belong to the person expressing them. They do not purport to reflect the opinions or views of Rancher or any other entity.
Hi. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Monday. Welcome to today's episode of Coffee and Cloud Native, the show that shares news and interesting content related to Kubernetes, Cloud Native, and other nifty technology. My name is Adrian Goins, and I'm thrilled to be here with you today. Look, title. I was trying to figure out why that didn't happen. It didn't happen for the same reason that sound didn't happen. I'm going to have to fix that button. If you're watching live, consider following or subscribing to the channel. And if you're watching a replay, give the video a thumbs up so the YouTube algorithm shares it with other people. Join the free community site and the Discord server. Links to that are in the video description. And not scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Can I make that appear? What happens if I do that? Hey, look, there's a thing there. So if you snap that with your phone, it'll take you to Discord. Discord is where all the action happens. And I know that I know that a lot of people are in a meeting today, but I will still say hello to those who are not in the United States, who are not in a meeting, well, those who are not in the United States and are still joining us because it's a holiday in the U.S. Anyway, good morning, Wojtek, Mose, Lewis. Hey, thanks, Lewis, for telling us that there was no audio. Frank, Ruas Novas. Okay, yeah, too many buttons. Hi, Shipwreck. That's funny. No, WifeBot, not the same problem as you. WifeBot... When WifeBot's doing her stream, sometimes she forgets to take her microphone off mute or to put a battery in it because it's complicated. Hermini, hello. Mose, Rob, no. Svelin, hey Svelin. I replied to your post on the community site. Welcome. It's nice to see you. Chrysalis, you want me to mime the show? Oh no, we can do it in like American Sign Language. What I was gonna do, like, we're gonna have like gang signs. Well, American Sign Language isn't really a gang sign, but, you know, we'll take what we can get. Okay, so yeah, scrolling back. So Gerald, Ariel, hello, hello. Frank, again, hello. Chrysalis, hello, hello, everybody. I'm seeing all of the no sound, no sound, no sound, no sound, no sound. I know Ian was here. He had to go to a meeting. Nuno has a meeting as well, so we rely on all of you to... hey, Mo Grady, good morning from Nashville. Hi, thanks for joining. We rely on all of you to carry on. Hey, Duck. Carry on the GIF war that is the show. Quickly, news. Do I have any actual news? Oh, I'm curious to know, what did you do this weekend? Tell me in the chat if you worked on, well, yeah, tell me what you did. Did you work on anything personal, project-y, learn anything new? Doc Forever is here. Hello. Okay, that's a crazy GIF. And also, for those of you who are running Mac OS, be warned that the latest Catalina update does some weird stuff. I use auto mounts, and it overwrote my whole auto mount configuration because they're like, whatever, why would you ever need to change this to customize it to what you want yourself? No, we're Apple. But the weirdest thing is it actually changed the hardware MAC address of my primary NIC on my iMac. So DHCP didn't work, and that took some time this morning for me to figure out why all of the WebSocket connection stuff that happens for the show wasn't working. So watch out. Frank says he learned for the CKAD. That's cool. Kesser worked on AWS ASG exporter for Prometheus. Doc Forever moved bean count to beanstalk. Wow. Marco distributed high-performance computing on Kubernetes this weekend. I love it. Chrysalis got Ansible up and running for setting up K3S on a Raspberry Pi. Awesome. Matthew Cooper did some work on building his Pi cluster. Hermini learned setting up CI pipelines in GitLab, wanting to auto-deploy Rancher and Kubernetes. Moses upgrade to Big Sur? No. I don't do Mac OS upgrades until the next thing comes out. So like Big Sur came out, and that was when I decided to upgrade to Catalina. And I only did it on these iMacs because they came with Catalina. Big Sur's got problems. I also have a lot of third-party software that, like the stuff that makes all that work, that is never updated at the same time. Wifebot says that she's enjoying all the bios in the community. Svilin installed K3S and joined it to Rancher. Yeah, Dux is such a productive weekend for everybody. Yeah, awesome. I worked on Flux and Sealed Secrets and got a big portion of stuff moved over to GitOps. And I'll continue working on that today for my DigitalOcean cluster. So that was pretty exciting. Oh, and Steve built a new log store. No Kubernetes involved. That's also important. We're in the process of moving back to the United States. We don't have a timeline for that yet. We'll know more about that in a week or so. And if we're going to be here for winter, then I have to figure out where to get firewood, because we probably don't have enough to make it through winter. So I understand the importance of doing that, Steve. Okay, let's get started. So, the collector bots have gathered content and scored it from 1 to 5 coffees. Waiting for the teleprompter to catch up. Those will be posted one at a time in Discord. Anyone watching live can rate them. Your votes are used to train the machine learning model that chooses content for the show, so get in there and vote. I apologize in advance for today's tool of the day. It has a very unfortunate name. It's still a cool thing. You'll see when we get there at the end of the show. I was like, really? Really? That cleared somebody's PR department? Okay. I'm going to jump over to the live voting channel. And let's see if Trufflebot woke up. Trufflebot hadn't had coffee this morning and was a little bit lagged. But looks like is back online. Compile and test a local Terraform provider. I wasn't sure if I was going to put this one on the show, but I think that for those of you who do infrastructure as code and those of you who aren't like super Terraform masters, you might run into a situation where you need to do this. The premise of this individual's article is that there's some stuff that's broken in Azure or in the Azure RM provider, and Azure and HashiCorp aren't going to fix it, so he had to fix it himself because it was negatively affecting him. Hooray, open source. And he wanted to share how he was able to tell his local Terraform environment to use the new provider. And you could use this if you wanted to test new features, if you wanted to pull down a beta copy or an alpha copy and see how something is without necessarily, deploying it live in your entire environment. It starts out with an introduction to Git. We all know that. It starts out with the how to build the Go binary. We all know that. And then basically says that Terraform doesn't look in the path where you tell it to. It looks in child folders that are constructed based on a platform name, and that's not super well documented and took him a while to figure out. And then you simply, in the required providers, you can tell it basically like a fake domain name and then something beyond that, and it'll look in that actual directory, and if it doesn't find it there, it'll fall back to the domain, but the domain doesn't exist in this case. It's just a gimmick, and so that's totally fine. And then goes on to explain Terraform init and how to actually troubleshoot any debugging blah 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 if this doesn't work for you. I see everybody's using Shipwreck's voting strategy. That's nice. Next, we have, apparently Travis has a problem. I didn't know that. Did any of you know that? You could say yes or no. I'm not actually going to go and look because it's in a different channel. Apparently, Travis was bought by somebody, and they've done away with the OSS credits. So you can no longer run a certain amount of stuff for free on Travis. And so that means you got to move somewhere. Well, how do you move and where do you go to? Their argument for why they disabled the free tier is that it was being abused by crypto miners. I find that a little difficult to believe since every single mining pool out there penalizes you for not staying connected to the pool. So if you fire up a crypto miner and run it for 30 seconds as part of like a build or a test thing or whatever, you're not going to get anything out of it. But maybe people aren't smart enough to figure that out. Or maybe that's just their excuse to come up with a reason that people can't really argue with. Anyway, where do you go? You can run your own builds. You could still stay connected to Travis, but use your own runners. And we see this with GitLab and other solutions. You could go to Circle, which still has a free tier. You could go to GitHub Actions, although people aren't sure if GitHub Actions is going to keep its free tier. There's nothing to say that it won't, but just the article says, and I agree, like just because something's free now doesn't mean something's going to be free forever. So being prepared with a plan of what you're going to do if somebody's like, now it costs money, will save you some headache and heartache and scrambling in the future. With Travis, you had 1,000 minutes total with application process. With Circle, you get 1 concurrent build at a time. With GitHub Actions, you get 20 concurrent builds per project. And then goes on to talk about how you can minimize the impact of having to move if you abstract away the unique functionality from your build process. So instead of building everything so that it utilizes 100% of what Travis is doing or GitHub Actions or whatever, abstract it with Makefiles and Docker files. And they just throw in a pitch at the end that, oh, perhaps you want to look at Earthly. I had never heard of Earthly. So, par for the course for the show, I'm like, what the heck is Earthly? Earthly does exactly that very thing. And I like the way that the article didn't really pitch their product, just said, hey, here's a bunch of things you could go to, here's how you could move to it, and here's how you can minimize this pain, and oh, hey, yeah, we do that. So if you're interested, we can help you with it. Basically, they have a whole build process that uses Makefiles and Docker files to abstract away the complexity of building stuff. Cool. Check them out. This is cool. I did not know that the Nginx Ingress controller included support for tracing. Did you? I'm going to actually go back to the live chat channel and see if anybody says that they knew that. Tell me if you knew that that was baked in. I did not. And what it means is if you want to actually trace what's going on with the ingress and where it's going and the response codes and all of those other things, Chrysalis says yes, Mogrady says no, Mose says no, Rob says no. Okay. Well, you just need to turn it on, basically. So set up Linkerd, activate the tracing, and then you can either do it at deploy time or you can update your existing Ingress controller installation by editing the config map and saying enable open tracing to true, enable open tracing true, and then set up an annotation. And then I can't blow these up for you because they're little tiny itty bitty images, but basically all of your tracing information is just going to show up inside of Linkerd, including a little icon. Then you can click on Jaeger, and there you go. Get your tracing. I looked at tracing and Jaeger, a couple of years ago when it was first starting to bubble up to the surface, and I was like, wow, this is really complicated. And I didn't like that I had to change all of this stuff inside my applications to enable all of this cool functionality. And I'm seeing more and more that activation already exists, and you just need to flip a switch and gain the benefits of it. Captain Justin says no. Chrysalis says it was great. Chrysalis is the only one who said yes so far. It was great when we could get rid of the custom Lua code that we had on our Edge OpenResty API. Yeah, I bet. Oh, wow, you all really liked that. Cool. ML. We talked about GPT-3 and its ability to write content that looks like it was written by a human. But it's a little bit fragile. If you push it outside the bounds of what it's capable of doing, then it sort of falls apart. And there's what was this thing called? AI Dungeon? This is weird. I don't know if this is actually based on GPT-3. I've gone off on a tangent here. I don't know if this is based on GPT-3 or if this is based on something else. But AI Dungeon, so this is aidungeon.io. It basically dynamically creates like an Infocom text-based dungeon crawler for you that's all ML based, and you can respond with basically whatever you want, and it'll try to come up with responses. It's kind of cool. It's a good demonstration of what AI is capable of. Well, the people who made GPT-3, OpenAI, have also created a thing called DALL-E that does the same thing as GPT-3 does for text, except it does it with images. And it doesn't, I'm pretty sure, I wasn't 100% convinced by the article, but I'm pretty sure that it doesn't just find images, that it actually creates images that look real. So for example, what you see on the screen here is somebody said, show me armchairs in the shape of an avocado. And it created a bunch of armchairs in the shape of an avocado, which is cool. I guarantee you there aren't this many avocado armchairs out there. So it talks about the capability of it and the limitations of it, and it's just really cool. This picture that you can barely see is when it was told to render a living room with 2 white armchairs and a painting of the Colosseum. The painting is mounted above a modern fireplace. And it generated 25 images that we have here that fit that criteria, but they're all fake. They proved that it wasn't just connecting things that it already knew about by asking it to do things like create a professional high-quality illustration of a giraffe turtle chimera. And it's definitely never seen a giraffe turtle chimera, but it rendered it in illustrations. Or a snail made of a harp. And then they went on to discover that it could do things that they didn't necessarily expect that it could do after all of the learning. Like it was really good at taking photos and converting them into illustrations. Or it can render custom text on street signs. This is, it understands food from China. So these kinds of things with ML are, while we're not there yet and it's not intelligence, I think it's really important that we keep an eye on this. This is going to creep its way into more and more and more things that we're interacting with, and there will be positive and negative responses to doing so. The more we know about it, the better equipped we are to respond to it. The less we know about it, the more likely it is to creep into places that we don't even see. It's a cool article talking about the training process and the limitations of it and stuff. What do we got next? Graph databases. I knew nothing about graph databases before reading this article. I've heard about like Facebook's graph blah blah blah, and I don't know what that means because I don't like Facebook and I don't care. But after reading this article, I care. I'm old school. I understand relational databases very well. I understand NoSQL databases reasonably well. Well enough to know that there's like for every 10 times I need to use a relational database, I've encountered 1/10 of a time to use a NoSQL database, but I have used them. I like their schema-less design. But graph databases do something. I apologize if all of you who are watching the show already know about this, but I'm hoping that somebody out there doesn't and is also going to think that this is cool. Graph databases actually model the relationship. So they're not schema dependent, but they model the relationships between objects as first-class citizens. So this article doesn't just explain how a graph database works. He actually applies it with, I mean, it's huge. It's one of those articles that's just massive. Can you see the scroll bar? Yeah, you can. Look, it's like that big. Talks about like how they work. It's a demonstration of how to do stuff with Azure. For some reason, today is heavy on Azure. I'm not responsible for that. And he creates like a fake medium understanding. So it's almost like you have the objects, so like a user, a membership, a topic, an article, and then the relationships between them become verbs. So like a user has a membership, a user likes a topic, a user publishes an article, or maybe reads an article. And all of those things can be constructed on the fly and then modeled and queried, and the result is a visual understanding of the relationship between your objects. Which is interesting because it's like you think a relational database management system would actually be more about relations, but you have to program those relations. This one is less programmatical, and you can just be like, yeah, let's just build those relationships, and then it just works. It goes on to show you how to do it with Azure Cosmo DB, with some really basic Python. Every time I say Python now, Shipwreck, I'm looking at you. Some really basic Python for getting stuff up and running and showing the relationships. Really cool. Shipwreck loves Python. This one I'm not going to spend any significant time on. I throw it out here because it's just Gremlin again. It's chaos engineering. It's validating horizontal pod autoscaling on EKS. It's a how-to of basically how to put something out there and make sure that your HPA actually works by slamming it with a whole bunch of load. So, yeah, there you go. It's a pretty basic how-to. But I really like that everything that Gremlin does is an attack. Like chaos engineering, they're like, oh, let's apply an experiment. And Gremlin's like, no, let's attack it. Da, da, da. That might be the fastest item we've ever done on the show. Oh, this next one's fun. I want this person, Braden, to do more of these. He just started a series. This is for all of us nerds. A series on the uncommon HTML tag series. There's a bunch of HTML tags that are not commonly used. This one, for example, is the KBD HTML tag. When you need to do monospace, do you ever just like put everything in a pre-tag or like a span? Or well, there's a KBD tag. The KBD tag is intended to indicate keyboard keystrokes. So if you're writing text and you want somebody, like you're saying, you know, to open a new tab on a Mac, press Command T. Then you just wrap the command and the T in KBD tags, and it will render by default in monospace. But then you can also do additional styling on it that you can't really see here because once again, his images are like crazy small. Here, there you go. So you can do additional styling on it to make it look like actual keys. That's a cool thing. And this is only the second in the series, and I would like he'll get a shout out in a tweet tomorrow. I want to see more of these. The first one, come on, you can make a progress bar in HTML. I had no idea. So it's just the progress tag. This is supported in all browsers. It's part of the HTML5 specification. So you can give it a number, so max is 100, value is 50, and it'll render the progress bar. And then just like with a tiny smidgen of JavaScript, you can change that value and you can make your users believe that something is happening. Better than that little spinning wheel thing that they never anti-alias. You know the one I'm talking about. You can tell the quality of a website if you can like see the half-white pixels around the thing and it's like still got the kind of square around it. And you're like, yeah, okay, there's nothing happening there. So thank you, Braden. Here we have... Why did I put this on the show? Oh, yeah. Okay, this is cool. More Azure. I'm sorry. It's an Azure day. I don't use Azure. I mean, I barely use AWS anymore. My stuff runs in DigitalOcean, mostly because I pay for it myself. But I really like Azure's approach to these things. AWS is like, we're going to take an open source thing and we're going to clone it and we're going to put them out of business by just offering it ourselves. Azure's like, I feel like they're adding value to concepts and not just, lifting Elasticsearch out and then selling it as a service, lifting this out and selling it as a service, lifting Mongo out and selling it as a service. AKS apparently just comes with metrics. So whatever, you need a Prometheus exporter and then you can tell it to scrape your stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. But there's a link here about how to create a Prometheus exporter. I have a bunch of custom applications and stuff that I build and write and run myself, like all of the bots for the show. And so lingering on the edge of my awareness is, I'd really like some metrics out of that. I'd like to know how many things Streambot is processing versus accepting versus rejecting, what percentage of stuff coming out of the Twitter streaming bot are tweets that we've already seen versus, things that are just being mad retweeted and stuff. Metrics are cool. Like with metrics, you learn what's happening. And here's a step-by-step guide on how to create your own metrics exporter in Python. Holy cow. You probably create it in Rust or Go if you want to also, but I don't know either of those languages. So back to this, you can, oh, they do something else that's really cool. If you want to set up the monitoring config, it's basically a config map. They offer a URL, kind of like AWS's metadata, but it's like, oh, how do I configure this? Well, you fetch from this URL and it just returns a default config file for you. And then you can edit it yourself. That's super convenient. No copying and pasting, no like going and finding, you know, XYZ123's site where he has something that you don't know if it's going to work. No, you just get, and there's your config. And then change one thing in it, apply it to your cluster, and now you've got monitoring and scraping and so on. So the rest of this talks about how to set that up with AKS, and apparently it's like dead simple and uber convenient. And then follow that link if you want your own Prometheus exporter. Mac posted a thing called Nebula that I discovered on Saturday morning. I was going to work on that this weekend, and I didn't. But go back in the, I don't know where it was, show suggestions or general chat. Oh, yeah, show suggestions. It might end up on the show. I think I submitted it. That's also really cool if you're looking for something to while away your time with. Otherwise, what do we have next? Oh, more Azure monitoring. I'm not going to spend much time on this. I put this in here simply oh my gosh, it's the end of the show. I put this in here simply because if you're on the side that's not all about Prometheus and Grafana and is about all of the Elasticsearch stuff, well, here's an article for you. FileBeat, MetricsBeat, Elastic Cloud all exist within Azure as well. And Elastic is also great. I started with Elastic and Logstash and Kibana because that was really like what was available. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just I think everybody knows Prometheus and Grafana and the whole Fluent bit D thing better. But here you go. FileBeat, MetricsBeat, Azure, hooray. Actually, I'm going to change my vote on that. And that leaves us now with just enough time for, oh my gosh, the unfortunately named Tugger. I'm trying not to laugh. Okay, Tugger is a tool that does something that's actually very interesting. When I was playing with Flux this weekend, and I was going through their documentation, which is not awesome. Like really most of the progress that I made on GitOps and Flux came from OneDrop's GitOps repo, his Flux repo that he has shared from Kate's at Home. And there are others that are out there as well, linked from the Kate's at Home site that I posted a few shows ago. That really allowed me to figure out how all of these things work together. But I was playing initially with a Kind installation because that's how their documentation says, oh, set it up a staging server on Kind, and then you can do like multi-tenancy or with customized, like send it out to production and whatever. I run a local caching server with Nexus here in my house. And the documentation to update containerd to tell it to always use the pull-through cache just doesn't work. I mean, it works, you run the config, but 100% of the containers are pulled straight from the internet. And you can't actually see anything in the Kind cluster. I can't get on it. I can't look at the containerd config. I don't know what it's doing. I just know it's not doing what I told it to do. This is a mutating admission webhook that will adjust all images to pull from a private registry. So the target for this is like an air gap environment where you don't want to have to remember to change every single manifest to pull from the right. This will do it for you. Because of the way that Nexus's pull-through cache functionality works, it's configured to know all of the repos that I talked to. Docker Hub, Quay, GCR, GHCR, GitLab, and so on. And then it also has its own registry, which is registry.cl.monoc.us, which is for me. It pulls the index files from all of those, so when I tell it to go get me something, it knows where it is. So I can pull from the URL of the local registry server, and it will figure out, oh, that container image, I don't have it locally, so that actually exists out in Docker Hub. And it'll pull it down, and it'll save it, and it'll serve it locally. So I could run this as an admission controller inside of a Kind cluster, and I no longer have to worry about the fact that it's stupid. It'll just, like, I've taken care of the stupidness for it. And it can do whatever it wants. and well, it's just going to pull from the cache anyway. So here you have Tugger, which apparently is, I don't know how this works. I actually opened an issue about this morning. This is from, well, it's from this individual, Jane Isha 17? Janish Shah. Oh, sorry, Janish. And says that that Tugger has graduated and his new home is JFrog Tugger. But if you actually go there, that repo is archived and hasn't been updated in 2 years. So I think this is the active repo. But anyway, I posted that as an issue and said, fix your README. That's Tugger. Join the Tool of the Day show. Join the Tool of the Day channel, where Shipwreck will, if he's not doing anything else today, take that for a test drive. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the show. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm just going to leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining me today. Links to everything I talk about on the show go up in the free community site at community.cncn.io after the show ends. Community members get early access to the links and other exclusive content. If you have something you would like me to consider for the show, post it in the community site or in the show's suggestions channel in Discord. Have a great day, everyone. Keep learning. Stay safe. If you're off today, enjoy the rest. If you're not, get back to work. I mean, go watch replays of my show. I'll see you in the next show. Stay caffeinated.